You double-check the message, then delete it, then write it again, just shorter. Because the more words you use, the more they might see something you didn't mean to show. You tell yourself you're just being thoughtful, but it doesn't feel thoughtful. It feels exposed. You obsess over how to say nothing wrong, because you don't know how to survive saying something real. And maybe it's not the spotlight you're afraid of. Maybe it's what it lights up. What if you weren't scared of being invisible, but of being understood too clearly? You shrink your voice before anyone hears it. Reroute a sentence mid-thought because it might sound too certain or too unsure. You edit while speaking, as if every word is a wire you're afraid to trip. There's no audience, no spotlight, but you still feel watched, not by them, by you. Like some version of yourself is standing just behind your shoulder, judging how clearly you've been seen today. Too confident? Tone it down. Too quiet? Say something. Too late? Never mind. You call it being careful, but it feels like preemptive regret, and what's worse, you're not even sure what you're trying to avoid. Only that the feeling of being noticed lingers long after the moment ends, like dust that won't settle. You weren't always this aware. There was a time, a long time ago, when you just spoke and moved and laughed. And then something happened. Not one big thing, just a series of tiny misfires. A comment that landed wrong, a joke no one laughed at, a glance that lingered too long or didn't return at all. You learned that attention could humiliate, that visibility came with consequences. And the worst part? They weren't loud, they were silent. You just felt the room shift, a breath held too long, a pause after your sentence, and your body memorized it, not as data, as danger. So you adjusted, not once, not consciously, but slowly, like erosion. Now you don't just choose your words, you pre-apologize for them. You overthink compliments, you replay moments where no one even seemed upset, because in your head, they were. Because in your chest it felt wrong. Because you learned, somewhere, sometime, that the price of being visible is too high to pay twice. You don't call it fear, because fear would mean stopping, and you don't stop. You show up, you function, you perform. But it's performance with an exit plan. Every interaction comes with a contingency script, a way to disappear, to shrink, to backpedal without being noticed. And you do it so well, no one even realizes you've left the moment. But you feel it, the blankness behind your eyes, the delayed responses, the subtle delay in what do you think? Because you don't know what to say without rehearsing the safest possible version. Here's the part that still stings. It's not just about being judged, it's about being known. Because what if they see the whole picture? Not just the part you planned, not the curated calm, but the glitches. The freeze when you're asked a direct question, the way your voice shifts pitch when you're unsure, the nervous laughter when someone lingers on you too long. What if they name the things you've tried to flatten out? What if someone sees the fear before you've covered it up? You think if you prepare enough, you'll be safe. But the preparation never ends. The words are never quite right. The outfit still feels wrong. The message still sounds too much or not enough. You rewrite texts 5 times and still feel like you said too much or nothing at all. Because when you hit send, you're not just communicating. You're submitting yourself for interpretation. And that's the loop. You try to control the outcome by shrinking the self. You think if you polish hard enough, no one will see the crack. But cracks don't vanish. They just get quiet. Until something presses too hard, and suddenly, you're back in that frozen space. You probably know this feeling, even if you've never said it. You rehearse a casual reply, but it sounds forced the second it leaves your mouth. You feel seen, but not in the way you wanted. And now you're spiraling in micro-regret, wishing you could rewind 5 seconds and just try again. It's not perfectionism. It's preservation. You're not trying to impress. You're trying to stay hidden while still appearing present. But that takes effort, an invisible mental load, a pressure no one sees because you never let it show. And some days you wonder, is this what showing up means now? Strategizing your personality? Designing your vulnerability in advance? It doesn't feel like connection, it feels like camouflage. Here's what no one sees. You're exhausted. Not physically, not even socially. You're exhausted from defending against something you can't name, but feel in your skin anytime someone looks too long, asks too much, gets too close. You keep things light, keep things vague, keep things efficient. But inside, there's noise. Not dramatic, just constant. The hum of self-monitoring. The static of never feeling like you can just be. And then, without warning, it shows up again. At work, at dinner, in a group chat, in the mirror. That flicker of panic when someone actually sees you, not the version you edited, but the real one. The glitch. The pause, the hesitation. And you smile and recover and say something smart. But it stays with you. That flash, that dread, that echo of a younger you who once got it wrong and never forgot felt like to be looked at and misread. So now, you make yourself smaller just in case. Not because they will judge, but because they might not. And that, somehow, feels worse. You make yourself smaller just in case. Not because they will judge, but because they might not. And that, somehow, feels worse. Because if they don't judge you, and you still feel wrong, then it was never about them, was it? This is where the silence started to scream. Not outside, inside. The silence you practiced so well, you forgot what your unfiltered voice even sounded like. You learned to study your own presence like a stranger. Smile modulation, response time, volume control, exit plan. You trained yourself to vanish without ever leaving the room. And this is where something quietly broke. Not all at once, not dramatically, just so slowly that you didn't notice you'd stopped showing up to your own life. You still go to work, you reply to texts, you even laugh at the right times. But when it's quiet, when no one's asking for anything, you don't know what you sound like without editing. And here's the part no one tells you. You can hide so well that even you stop looking. What if no one ever really knew you? Because you never felt safe enough to let them. What if your strength was just you holding in the scream for too long? What if every part of you they praised was just another layer of your armor? And what happens when the armor starts to feel like a cage? It's not anxiety, it's exhaustion. Not from people, from maintaining the version of yourself that feels allowed. You don't freeze because you have nothing to say. You freeze because you can't tell if saying it will cost you something you don't know how to name. Trust, safety, or worse, the illusion that you're still in control. You keep your thoughts short, your emails professional, your preferences flexible. Because the longer you linger, the more exposed you feel, and you're not sure what they'll find, but it never feels like it'll be okay. You avoid attention like it's a trigger. You flinch at compliments, you shrink from kindness that feels too direct. You call it humility, but sometimes it feels more like preemptive shame, like you're apologizing for being noticed, before anyone even reacts. Right here is where you got used to disappearing. Not just from others, from yourself. You don't cry, you detach. You don't scream, you go quiet, you don't break down. You just get smaller until the ache fits inside the version of you that everyone else seems to like. And you wonder, if you finally said something real, if you finally let yourself be seen, not polished, not prepared, just real, would anyone even recognize you? Would you? You almost said something, but the room didn't feel safe enough, and maybe it never did. Maybe you learned to swallow every word that didn't come with certainty. Maybe silence wasn't protection. Maybe it was a skill. There are days you still rehearse what no one asked you to say. You still edit yourself, even when you're alone. You still shrink in places where no one's looking. Just in case. And it's not that you don't want to be seen. It's that you're not sure what's left to show. You start to wonder, what if you were never invisible? Just unread? What if it's not attention you fear, but recognition? Not the glance, but the possibility that someone might see the parts of you you never learned how to accept. And maybe you've been overthinking the small stuff because the big stuff still feels too loud, too close, too unspoken. There's a version of you you've only ever shown in pieces, and even then, you pull back before it settles. You don't need to be louder. You just need to know you're still here, even when no one's asking. You don't have to figure it all out. Just don't disappear mid-thought.